Imagine signing a piece of paper, knowing that the moment the ink dries, you've just signed your own death warrant. In 1776, 56 men did exactly that. They weren't just fighting for a new country, they were committing high treason against the most powerful empire on earth. If they failed, they wouldn't be called founding fathers, they would be swinging from a British gallows. This is the story of how a group of rebels turned the world upside down.
The birth of liberty, the epic story of the American Revolution. 1. The calm before the storm. The year was 1770. The air in the 13 American colonies was thick, not with the humidity of the Atlantic, but with the suffocating weight of an empire. For over a century, the British Crown had viewed the American wilderness as a piggy bank, a source of raw materials and a captive market for high taxes. In the cobblestone streets of Boston, the tension finally snapped. What began as a snowball fight between angry colonists and bored British redcoats turned into a massacre. 5 colonists lay dead in the snow. This wasn't just a riot, it was the first heartbeat of a revolution. The colonists didn't want a king 3,000 miles away deciding their fate. They wanted a voice. They wanted a home that belonged to them. 2. The Midnight Message. Fast forward to April 18, 1775. The British Army had received secret orders to march to Concord to seize a cache of gunpowder and arrest the rebel leaders, Samuel Adams and John Hancock. But the colonists had eyes everywhere. Enter Paul Revere. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Revere waited for a signal from the Old North Church, 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. 2 lanterns flickered. Revere kicked his horse into a gallop, tearing through the dark countryside. He wasn't just riding a horse, he was carrying the spark of a new world. "The regulars are coming out!" he shouted at every farmhouse. Because of that one night, when the British reached Lexington at dawn, they didn't find a sleeping village. They found 77 Minutemen, farmers and shopkeepers who had vowed to be ready in a minute's notice, standing firm with muskets in hand. Then came the shot heard round the world. To this day, no one knows who fired first, but that single crack of a rifle signaled the end of the British Empire's absolute grip on the West. 3. The boldest document in history. By 1776, the colonies were in a full-scale identity crisis. Were they British subjects or a new people? In a hot, humid room in Philadelphia, a young, lanky Virginian named Thomas Jefferson sat with a quill pen. He wasn't just writing a letter, he was writing a death warrant for himself if he failed. The Declaration of Independence was an act of treason. It stated a radical idea that shocked the world. All men are created equal. On July 4th, 1776, the delegates signed it. They knew that if they lost the war, they would all swing from a British gallows. They weren't just fighting for lower taxes anymore. They were fighting for the pursuit of happiness. 4. The Winter of Despair, Valley Forge. Every great story has a dark night of the soul, and for USA, that was the winter of 1777 at Valley Forge. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, was a ragtag group of survivors. They had no shoes, their clothes were rags, and food was so scarce they resorted to eating fire cakes, a tasteless mixture of flour and water. Bloody footprints marked the snow. Out of 12,000 men, nearly 2,000 died of disease and starvation. But Washington was a different kind of leader. He didn't stay in a warm mansion, he stayed in a tent with his men. He brought in a Prussian officer, Baron von Steuben, to turn these farmers into a professional army. They emerged from that winter not as a broken mob, but as a steel-hardened force. If they could survive the winter of Valley Forge, they could survive anything King George III threw at them.
V. The Great Gamble,
crossing the Delaware. Perhaps the most famous true scene in American history happened on Christmas night, 1776. The Revolution was dying. Soldiers' enlistments were about to end. Washington needed a miracle. In the dead of night, amidst a howling storm of sleet and ice, Washington led his men across the frozen Delaware River. It was a suicide mission. They marched 9 miles through the snow to Trenton, New Jersey, where a formidable force of Hessian mercenaries was celebrating the holiday. The surprise was total. Washington captured nearly 1,000 prisoners without losing a single man in combat. This wasn't just a military victory, it was a psychological one. It proved that the invincible British Empire could be outsmarted. VI, the final stand at Yorktown. By 1781, the war had dragged on for 6 long years. The British general Cornwallis had retreated to the coastal town of Yorktown, Virginia, expecting the British Navy to protect him. But he was wrong. The French, now allies of the Americans, blocked the sea. Washington and his troops surrounded the land. For weeks, the earth shook with artillery fire. On October 19, 1781, Cornwallis realized he was trapped. As the British Army marched out to surrender, their band played a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down." It was true. A group of 13 colonies had defeated the most powerful military force on the planet.